Hello, everyone, and welcome to this DigiCon session, Applying UDL in Online Courses. This is going to be a panel discussion. My name is Brendan Lake. I'm an instructional designer for ASU Online. I'm joined by three very talented instructional designers. We have Julie to my left, and then we have Mary Loder, and then we have Collie Andrews. You may be noticing our camera setup here. We're using the Meeting Owl, which I'm very impressed with. It's one of my first meeting things using it, but it's a very cool tool. So if you're wondering about that. So to introduce the panel, to start off, we'd like to know more about you, some of our audience members. And so if you can post in the chat what your name is, where you're from, and particularly we'd like to know your experience with online courses, maybe if you're new to UDL. And so take a moment to kind of share us a little bit about yourself in the chat. While some of you are posting to the chat, I will give a little bit of context on ASU. At ASU Online, or at ASU total, we actually have 112,000 students. 40,000 of those are fully online, which means from the moment they start ASU to the moment they graduate, they are taking fully online courses, so we have a lot of those. We also have 72,000 campus-based students across 4 campuses. And many of those students will take online courses. So we have a lot of offerings for online students. We have 220 degree programs offered fully online, and about 300 total degrees and certificates.
And it looks like we have a mix of participants today from all over the United States, and it looks even from international locations as well. So that's pretty awesome. Thanks for joining our session. And it looks like we've got a mixed bag as far as who teaches online and who's learning to deploy resources or in strategies that we're using in online learning. So kind of what we expected from today's panel.
Yes, it's great. We've got faculty, we've got instructional designers, we have administrators, so we have the whole gamut. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Eric said there's people from 11 countries registered. So what a great turnout for the first UDL for higher ed. Awesome. DigiCon, yeah.
I see one of our colleagues from Continuing Ed at ASU, Diane.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us. All right, well, we're going to get started. So if we could have Brendan with our panel.
I'll take a moment to discuss the structure for this panel. We're going to start with about 10 questions for our panelists, and then we'll open it up to everyone in the chat. But if you do have a question that's very relevant to what we're talking about, feel free to post in the chat. I'll try to catch your question, and I'll bring it up to the panel as they come up. So the first question on here is, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in UDL.
Well, I'll start with me. I'm Mary Loder, and I'm an instructional design specialist for ASU Online. I actually just joined higher ed a couple years ago, and so in coming to ASU, I was talking to a friend who happens to be blind, and he expressed that he is a student in one of the programs I was given to support. So that was where my initial connection to making sure my courses were accessible came in. It was a personal connection for me. And then in working at ASU Online, I met Julie Allen, who I consider my resident specialist on accessibility and universal design. And she suggested that I attend the UDL IRN conference. And so I did this last April. It was awesome. If you have not had a chance to attend, absolutely attend that conference. It is big, but it feels very small in reference to everyone's very welcoming and open to sharing the resources. It was a really good environment. So highly recommend that, by the way.
All right, well, I'm Julie Allen. I'm a senior instructional designer here at Ed Plus at ASU Online. And I kind of similarly came to UDL through a very circuitous route. About 10 years ago, I was working as an editor with an instructional design department at University of Phoenix. And we had a group, WebAIM. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with WebAIM. We had them come in and do a presentation for our team because we really weren't doing much in terms of accessibility at the time. And so they did this great presentation, but as you all know, in terms of accessibility, there are guidelines, they're not rules per se. So it became apparent really quickly that people really needed help figuring out how does this apply to my course? How do I make my existing materials accessible? And so I kind of took on that role of trying to really figure out, doing a deep dive into the accessibility of the WCAG standards and figuring out like how those apply. And then that kind of led me beyond that into the world of universal design, like going beyond just like the legal requirements for making things, web accessibility content guidelines, and really making the holistically making the learning experience more useful, more relevant, and more engaging for all of our students. So, so welcome.
Okay. And
Don't need to, you got the owl.
I'm Colleen Andrews. I am an instructional designer with the UTO department, University Technology Office. I've also been in higher ed for over 10 years. Julie and I actually met at University of Phoenix way back. And I am an adjunct by night as well. I teach sociology courses, 200 and 300 level courses for a local community college here. I first got involved with UDL and I'm just becoming familiar with it more and more. But like Mary was saying, I have a friend who is visually impaired, who is also an attorney. So I actually was made aware of just the legal implications of not having education be accessible to all. So that's sort of like, piqued my interest and got me involved in it more and more. And the work that I do here at University of Phoenix, or at Arizona State University, is with helping others make their online classes, face-to-face classes, all of that accessible to all learners and students.
Oh, and I think we were going to share the Google slides so we could caption some of
Oh
this.
yes,
Right.
We were told that the AI media captions may not be as readily available in the Zoom meeting, so we do have a Google slide, hopefully, that we can share. Let me see if I can do that actually. Sure, having
Yeah, I was
Chrome
having
stuff
yeah
going
Chrome
on.
issues though. I might be out of commission, unfortunately. But we'll get that up and running for everybody.
Okay.
It'll be an experiment for us too. So
yeah, I've never used it. Actually, Philippos, our manager of technology, first introduced us to the captioning option in Google Slides. And so let me see. I might need your help, Julie.
if you go
This
to
is a learning
present,
experience for us all right now. So I'm going to share my screen first. Okay, and then present.
Yeah,
There
if
we
you go
go.
to present, it should be in Google Slides. Yeah, and then there should be at the bottom. There should be an option that says captions. There you go.
Yep.
So fun fact, it doesn't work in Firefox. It only works in Chrome. The caption option. So found that out the hard way. Anyway.
Oh, it works.
Wow.
Hey, all right, everybody. Okay, so we've got this cool slide up now so we can have captions for the most part. So if you want to see our cute faces, I suppose you could access that video directly if you don't need the captions, but feel free to stay on this screen if you would like to see those. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. And I'll also add, I'm the moderator, but I'm also very new to UDL, so I'm going to leave all the expertise to the other panelists. So I'll just be asking the questions. The next question on our list is, as instructional designers, I would say that one of our most critical roles is communicating concisely what something is and why it's valuable to gain buy-in and promote positive change. So with that in mind, what would be your brief description of what UDL is and why it's valuable, particularly to an online audience?
Well, I would say, it kind of goes back to UDL principles, like the same principles that we know apply to our students. But a lot of times when working with faculty, I find that when recommending any kind of strategy or any kind of best practice, like you really have to frame it in terms of why it's relevant to them and how it's going to benefit them personally, and how it will obviously benefit their students. So usually when I'm talking about UDL, I'm really talking about, especially here at ASU, it's really baked into our charter. Part of our charter is that we measure ourselves by who we include as opposed to who we exclude. And we, our president, President Crow, is very interested in the idea of the universal learner. So it's, basically like cradle to grave, creating not online, but creating like digital and ground focused educational experiences that work for a variety of age groups, people maybe coming back and doing some like re-careering. People all over the world, we're really kind of moving into more international spaces as well. So, framing in terms of UDL is really going to help you make your learning more relevant, more useful to students no matter where they are. It's going to help you in terms of, helping your students understand what you're teaching is relevant. We hear that a lot from students, right? Especially like general ed courses, like, well, I don't have to take this, humanities course, I'm an engineering major. And so, again, like going back to this idea of like really creating goals and objectives that really clearly, talk about the transferable skills and really speak to what it is that they're going to be able to do at the end of the course and why it's useful, and how that will help with engagement, how that will help students be more successful ultimately. So we're really trying to focus UDL in terms of like how it's going to benefit them.
Actually, I thought it was funny that Brendan said, I don't really know an UDL, and so I'm just going to let the specialist, because of our charter, you may not know the framework and be able to speak to your design elements, but Brendan, I know you and I know the work that you do with your faculty, and he very much so promotes UDL in reference to variable access to content, thinking about how students will be able to relate content to their real life. And so, it's a funny thing to say, I don't really know, I'm new to UDL, because sometimes it's just inherent in our integrity to try to be inclusive. And inclusive of everyone's experiences and their ability to access things. So when I think of UDL, I think of the framework, of course, and the more specific thing that I learned when I was at the CAST UDL IRN conference was really about learner variability. And I thought, well, duh, online learners, variability is necessary, right? So we have all these individuals who have these competing priorities and they have competing access, right? So driving in the car, cooking dinner, we were talking about how Facebook, they have like captions for most videos. And so a lot of people don't even listen to the videos on Facebook anymore because they're able to consume it in the way that matches their need. So when I think of UDL, I think of matching the needs of all learners. And to do so is kind of a balancing act. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about.
Definitely.
Do you want to add to that? I think we talked a lot.
I totally co-sign everything that you said. And I also think about UDL in terms of, students with hidden disabilities. I think that there's always, students in the classroom that we know of who have disabilities, but there are those who may be a little shy, who may not always come and be upfront about what their disability is. And so as instructional designers, we do have to think about UDL in terms of being inclusive completely with all students.
And I love that you said that. I went to a parent-teacher conference last night, and my child's the kind of child who needs variable ways to consume information, and not all elementary schools are designed equally and are ready for that. And so that's interesting, right? Don't make them try to have to figure out what their disability is to ask for it.
Right.
Just provide the access so that they can figure out what works for them.
Exactly.
Maybe they never need to identify with the disability, but
Right.
you created a space that helps them feel safe to consume the information. That's a really interesting insight there.
Well, and also too, there's no lag period, right? Where they have to wait.
Right.
You bake this stuff up front. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, in some ways of online courses is that, really like we encourage our faculty to have their courses completely ready 2 weeks before the term starts. So everything's in place, the shell is in the LMS is built out, everything's there, captions are there, everything's there. And so, especially when you're thinking about providing information in variable, right? Maybe you have the same information in a video, in a reading, in a podcast, in a variety of different, we'll talk about this more in more depth, but they don't have to wait. There's no lag period. They're not waiting. They're not a week behind everybody because they're waiting for closed captions.
Right.
They're not a week behind because they're waiting for an instructor to come up maybe with some kind of an alternative assignment. So when UDL is really considered in upfront in the design process, I think it just results in a better experience for everybody.
Fantastic. So next up, we have the broad question of how do you think UDL impacts online student success? Maybe compared to a face-to-face program, how that might be different.
I think it goes back to kind of what we were talking about, where, there just are very different spaces, and we find that for digital experiences, either, hybrid or online, you don't have that same opportunity to be in front of students. So you might, one thing that we kind of always tell faculty is that, if you're not really clear, right, in your instructions, prepare to answer the same question 50 times from 50 different students in email, right? As opposed to just being in class and being able to answer at once. So, it's kind of what we're talking to, speaking to earlier. Oh, sorry, is there a question?
No, it was just more of a comment. Someone said that we're speaking really fast and captions are doing their best to keep up with us. So just like a comment to help us pace, because I do the same thing.
Oh, sorry.
No, you have good information. I want everybody to get it.
I know, I've had a ton of caffeine, so I apologize. But yeah, just I think in the online space, again, like having those options built in before the launch of the course. And especially in an online class, is another thing we were kind of chatting about before this panel, is that, you know, again, you may have students in China and then, you know, students in the United States, students all over the world, students in Mexico, students, you know, different languages, different cultural backgrounds. And again, like kind of considering those needs, you know, again, you know, trying to make things that will be culturally relevant, giving students options. You know, maybe if it's a case study, giving them the choice, maybe they find their own case study that is really relevant to them, their unique situation and their interests. But having those things baked in up front, I think, because you may have a more diverse population online.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Just being intentional. You have to be more intentional online. Intentional planning, and I think you're going to share some of our planning that we go through, and just being really thoughtful about the diversity of students that live in the online environment. It's not the same user as the campus-based programs. You might have some sprinkled in because online sounds like it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're dealing with professionals, parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about how you can engage and create content that is sticky for those groups definitely makes you think of UDL, because you have to be more diversified in how they're going to interact with the content and how they're going to connect to the content, and then how they're going to help others see their experience and draw out you know, outcomes that you may not have thought about.
Definitely.
And then in terms of just how we're assessing our students, right? We always have to think about, you know, at the end of the day, what are we asking students to be able to demonstrate, and making sure that we employ all of the UDL principles gives everyone the chance to shine, to be able to, you know, pass and be successful in class, and, you know, hopefully have a great experience and, you know, further their education.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to the third question. The fourth question. How is UDL being implemented or championed in your division?
I can say one thing that we're doing at ASU Online right now, and this is actually in partnership with the University Technology Office and the Disability Resource Center.
Mm-hmm.
In online classrooms, we often use technology that is not always necessary to use in campus-based courses. And so because of these digitally immersed programs, we find that there are many shortcomings with vendors that we use. And they're not always honest on their VPAT, unfortunately. And so we had to create a space that intentionally tests technology. So I work with our Disability Resource Assistant Director, Adaro Allison, and she has a wealth of student resources available that have volunteered to place themselves in the position of individuals that would be using these courses, whether they really are students in the courses or not. And they run over the entire spectrum of abilities. And so when we're testing these products, we get direct feedback from our users. We're able to screenshot what's happening, articulate what needs to be changed to the developers within these companies. And we've actually been really successful. Yellowdig is one of those big third-party technology companies, and they just didn't know that their system wasn't responsive for sight-impaired users, to the point where it was completely unusable, and these were required experiences in the course. So one, we came up with alternative plans as the need definitely presented itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, they redesigned their entire platform, and they came out with Engage this year, which is completely accessible. They had us come back in, retest everything. And so it was just a really cool experience to be able to see that, one, we have access to the resources in our local universities and colleges when we engage with our Disability Resource Center and the student workers that work with them, that those who have impairments are more than happy to provide their time to test technology and provide that user experience, and that we do have vendors that care. They just don't know. And so presenting the information to them helps them better address that issue and make everything better for every single user, whether it's at ASU or at any other university.
In our division at UTO, we've had to actually go back and make quite a few changes in the way that we were delivering our trainings even. So, you know, having things online for people to be able to access is great and all, but if we're not meeting the needs of all of our internal customers, our faculty, our staff, in terms of making our trainings accessible for them, then what are we doing, right? So actually just role modeling the UDL principles and providing our trainings and our face-to-face help in multiple formats has really been a way that we've been able to bring more awareness around UDL and just meeting the needs of all of our users.
So I have some notes and I kind of combine them with a question that we're going to be asking later. So I apologize if this is redundant, but just was kind of trying to think about the UDL checkpoints and some of the things that I've seen faculty, do in their courses, which I think is really cool. In terms of, optimizing checkpoint 7.1, optimizing individual choice and autonomy. We have a lot of faculty who will begin the course with an icebreaker activity to kind of let students get to know each other. And they'll include a reflection where they really ask them to think about their goals. Why are you taking this course? What do you hope to get out of it? How might you use this information? And then, so not only does that help students kind of think about, okay, why am I taking this course? But then it helps the faculty member, because I know there have been some faculty who have gone in and kind of tweaked some of the material, maybe added resources to kind of, again, help speak to those individual goals, which I think is fantastic. And, even I know in a ground course, sometimes I know I'm one of those students, I don't really like talking in class. I would not be one to raise my hand. And so in an online environment, you really do, I think, get a lot of folks who might be more likely to share that information because they can sit and type it out and really think about it. So I think, that's one way where the online space, I think, is great for UDL. Allowing students to choose topics for assignments, right? So like a case study, for example, we use Canvas here as our LMS, and we'll sometimes use the group tool that allows students to self-enroll. So we'll create groups for different topics for different assignments, and then students can choose the group. So a history paper, I'd like to talk about the American Revolution. I'd like to talk about, so they can sign up. And then it gives them a space where students who are working on the same topic can chat, again, bring in that kind of collaborative element. They can bounce ideas off of each other, even do peer reviews. Allowing choice of deliverables for assignments. I've seen faculty, give, you can do a paper, you could do a podcast, you could do a presentation. So kind of giving, when it's appropriate, giving some different options for students who may have different interests and abilities and interests. Minimizing threats and distractions. A lot of this stuff is actually built into the LMS. A lot of the common LMSs, Moodle and Blackboard and Canvas and whatnot, in terms of calendars and schedules. Canvas actually will build that out. It builds out a calendar and builds out a really nice, in the syllabus, it'll automatically input all of your assignments and give the due dates and the points. And so, various ways. And it is nice because LMS will do that automatically for you. But I think those are helpful in online as well. Creating etiquette guidelines in terms of creating a accepting and supportive classroom climate, giving those guidelines up front. What do we expect when we say we want this to be a civil discussion? What does that mean? What are we looking for? What is unacceptable? And then we have in our syllabus too that essentially we reserve the right, if you're not meeting these guidelines, that we can remove you from the class. Yeah, if it's creating a hostile environment.
Yeah.
One thing, and I don't know if I want to try and share since we've got so much going on, but in terms of standardizing, establishing consistent classroom routines. One thing we do recommend to our faculty, at least for ASU Online, we've created a standardized Canvas template that's based on, if anybody's familiar with Quality Matters, we took the essential Quality Matters standards and actually formatted a template. So we have, accessible, if you need accessibility information, it's always in one place. The syllabus is always in one place. So kind of students going from course to course, regardless of the program, regardless of, they should have a consistent navigation structure. I think that's really helpful for students.
We can show that at the end too.
Yeah, at the end, I think that would be perfect. Oh my gosh, I have so many notes. Multiple media for communication. I think this is another way online can be amazing. You can provide web readings, open education resources, videos, infographics, podcasts. Whereas maybe a ground classroom, you're giving a lecture. Online, you can really bake in those things up front and give students that information in a variety of different modalities.
Which is more bite-sized too.
Yeah.
I think is really important because when you think about variable access, not everybody has an hour to dedicate to your lecture, no matter how awesome you are and how interesting you make it and how highly produced it is. I just don't have that kind of time. I got 3 kids.
Yeah.
So I've got like 10 minutes to give you, and it would be really nice to know what of your course is 10 minutes that I can consume right now. So even including like timestamps on the content that you provide to them. Hey, this is a 6-minute video, and here, this is exactly what I think you should want to get out of it as you're listening to it or reading the captions. So just being really intentional about creating knowledge that they can use to better interact with your content.
That's actually a great point, because I've seen instructors also include like study guides with their lectures. So we'll give them kind of like the objectives for the week and kind of give them spaces to take notes. So that kind of helps, frame what they should be pulling away. And actually kind of piggybacking off of that too, when I was going through my master's program, I would take, like if PDFs were available in the course shell, I would run it through a automated program that would, speech to text. And so then I would take that MP3, and I have a 45-minute commute to and from work. So I would listen to my readings in the car. It was immensely helpful.
Yeah.
Really saved me a lot of time. And I think a lot of students too, they're, maybe they're watching a video on, if they're taking the subway or they're taking the bus or something, they might, watch those videos in just those little snippets of time. So having those alternative media is really useful. And and different modalities, podcasts. In terms of multiple tools for construction and composition, maybe including a link with, relevant tools, different, for an English class, like including Grammarly, Google Docs, Lucid Charts, Google Translate. And we have a tool that we're just now turning on called Ally that we'll talk about in a bit that has some of these resources. But, if you don't have access to anything, or maybe, you're just getting started in online, there's a lot of great free resources, and you can kind of build like a repository maybe of some of those tools and allow students to choose what they want to use. Enhancing capacity for monitoring progress, checkpoint 6.4. A lot of times if they have a major assignment, say like a research paper at the very end of the course, like we'll build checkpoints throughout the course. So, okay, in week 3, you should have your outline done. In week 4, you should have your first paragraph, and kind of build those scaffolds within the course. So it's just a nice little checkpoint, kind of tells students approximately where they should be. And then I've even seen instructors create like peer review opportunities at those checkpoints. So if students want to, it can be optional or required, but students can submit that for peer review or for some feedback, formative feedback, before they have to turn in the major assignment. And I think that can be, again, like really easy to organize online. That could either be like in a discussion forum, could be super informal. Canvas actually has a peer review tool built in. Blackboard, I think, also has a peer review tool. So a lot of LMSs have those options. And then, fostering collaboration and community, checkpoint 8.3. There's, discussion tools, there's group tools. I think that's pretty common in LMSs. It can be, creating smaller discussion groups. I've seen faculty create learning communities that are super informal, like they're kind of organize students into smaller groups.
Or even on Facebook.
On Facebook, yeah. And it's literally just a space, like if you have questions, you want to work through something.
Or you like share something cool.
Share something, yeah, totally. So there's lots of opportunities online for, creating those collaborative spaces.
And campus-based too. I think some of those you can still employ in the campus classroom, and it might even connect a class of 500 in a lecture hall to a more personalized experience if they have another community online where they can engage if they are that introvert, but they really found something neat, but they didn't want to raise the hand in front of all of the students in the lecture hall.
Right.
Now you're creating that space for them, even those campus-based experiences.
I just hear that anecdotally from faculty all the time, that they're really, especially the ones who are a little hesitant about teaching online, they kind of feel like they're going to lose that interpersonal connection. And they're really surprised because, in the discussions, you may have those, 2 or 3 like extroverted students who are kind of always dominating the discussion. And I've heard a lot of people say that the discussions are much richer because students are not, so nervous about speaking.
I've had faculty say they've developed stronger relationships with their online students than they ever had with their campus-based students. And that was not to say their campus-based students didn't have good relationships with them. They were like a beloved professor, right?
Yeah.
But because they had the capacity to engage with all these individuals online, it just created much more connection opportunities.
Well, and especially if you, maybe perhaps like have a speech impediment, or something's, it's uncomfortable for you to speak in the, in a group setting. Like, I think that can be a very like low pressure way to really share your thoughts, and you can delete stuff, you can go back, you can reread it a bunch of times before you share. So
Yeah, so we just had Donna say she would agree with that. She's taught both online and campus-based and knows her online students better. So,
Nice.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
All right, so next question deals with a topic we just brought up a little bit ago, which was faculty new to teaching online. If you've taught online before, you know there's a lot to learn. It can be very overwhelming between the new pedagogy, the modality, the technology, the policies. So as instructional designers or champions of UDL, how do you approach a faculty member new to online as opposed to someone more experienced?
Honestly, for me, new, tenured, it's really more about their openness and their growth mindset.
Yeah.
Because you can be a long-term faculty member and think you know everything, and then you put this person in an online venue and they do the same thing and they do not get the same output that they're used to.
Absolutely.
So it just depends really on their availability to consume the information and the advice that we might give in their consultations. And that's personal for me. But we have a lot of training at ASU Online and at ASU in general to assist individuals no matter where they're at. We have Masterclass, which if you haven't heard of it, is a course that runs for 2 weeks, and it's like a real class. Like faculty are put into this course and they're expected to participate, and they have graded activities and they actually receive a grade and they receive a certificate when they're done. We have individuals from all over the country coming to participate as guests in that course because it's a pretty well-created course. I had nothing to do with creating it, by the way. But I did take it when I first got hired at ASU Online, and it was a really eye-opening way to experience an online course from the role of a student while still learning how to be an adequate instructor and how to build courses. So it's very well done. It certainly doesn't make anyone who's involved feel like they don't know what they're doing. They get to express their knowledge, which is actually what creates that better community within the course. So for me, old or new, train them.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting, you know, sometimes when you're working with somebody experienced, they may, especially I found like folks who, this isn't so much true anymore, but folks who maybe taught online in like the very, very, very first days of we had Blackboard here back when I was a college student, an undergrad. And, you know, it's not what it is today. And, you know, they may have some preconceived notions of, you know, kind of the limitations, and, you know, may be a little, you know, hesitant to jump back into the foray. So, you know, so for new folks, I think it's, yeah, just kind of like framing, you know, again, like the benefits of UDL and just, you know, really all the different tools and all the different ways that we can accomplish these goals. And, you know, yeah, just kind of assuaging their fears, I think.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that, you know, one of the challenges, some of the hurdles, I guess, would be just trying to get faculty to think about it from the student's perspective. A lot of times we get caught up in our world of what we're doing right now and, you know, the time that we have to get things prepared and, you know, wanting to make sure that, you know, we're getting just the basics down in terms of our content and our material. But at the end of the day, we're here to serve our students. Like without our students, we don't really have a job, right? So, you know, just getting them to understand how important it is and, you know, making sure that they know that they have the ability to do this work, that it's not impossible, and that there's all kinds of support, there's all kinds of resources that they can lean on to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in our librarian world, we have the ASU Reading Library List, which is a system called Leganto, and it just sits inside Canvas. So the faculty can add content, videos, articles, books into Leganto. They can send them over to the library, and if they're available electronically, then they will automatically be put into the Reading Library List to access them. But what's really nice is they also make sure that they're accessible. So that's a huge piece for us right now as we're moving into using one of our new tools this next session, is to make sure that our content is actually tagged and able to be used with a screen reader adequately. So that's a big part of creating a really positive experience along the side of training and providing access to them, is just explaining where their resources are, that they don't have to do everything on their own.
Right.
And helping them see how easy it really will be to add it. And you don't have to do everything, right? I think Thomas Tobin, who might be speaking right now, actually, did a presentation last year at the conference, and I bought his book. It was great. It's a plug for Thomas Tobin. Go get any of his books. But he was really big on the +1. So you don't have to do it all. Just pick one thing. Each session, what is one thing that you can do that makes it a better experience for your students? It can be adding captions to one video or all of your videos. It could be just going through and making sure that your documents truly are accessible, making sure images are really tagged, making sure you have images next to content to help them make those connections. So lots of things that we can do, and you don't have to do it all at once.
Absolutely, that's a great point.
Yeah. Smartguy.com.
Oh yeah.
Right, so the next topic on our list is how might you measure the success or impact of UDL on student success, or maybe any examples that you've seen of programs evaluating the impact or success?
This is a great question, and I think this is something that we could be doing a better job of for sure. I think, you know, there's some opportunities, just thinking more globally. I would be really interested to see some surveys deployed in our courses. We have, we're very lucky here that we have an action research team that is basically their sole focus, is really doing those kind of like action research projects to figure out what works, what doesn't work in online education. So that's something I would love to see us do, frankly, at some point, is you know, when we're designing these courses and we're thinking about the checkpoints and thinking about like how we're going to implement that, you know, maybe deploying some surveys, getting some qualitative and quantitative feedback in terms of like whether or not that is helpful, how students are using it, are they using it? And I think just in terms of the UDL space in general, especially in online education, if anybody out there is thinking about doing any research projects, I know I would love to see those published and have data, because I think, again, going back to that piece of how do we get buy-in, I think especially when you're working with tenured faculty, well, just faculty in general, not just tenured, having research to back it up a lot of times will go a long way.
Or even the costs, right? Because UDL is not inexpensive when you're thinking of caption creation. If you're not using, even if you are using a resource to type it, you're paying their salary because it's almost a full-time job.
Yeah.
So thinking about, like, does it make a cost benefit analysis for them with student access and their enjoyment in the course to pay for captions in every video? Yes, I can tell you it does, but I would need data to back that up, because not everyone's just going to believe me, right?
I had chatted at one point with one of our research folks about doing a small study. One thing he recommended was to actually include a survey within that item, so that you know, so students can give feedback right at the instance. So if you're a Google well, actually there's so many there's so many different free survey tools out there, but Google Forms is a great one. We use that quite a bit. So that could be a way to get some feedback, just even for your own knowledge, like, is this worth doing if you're implementing something for the first time, maybe just, you know, in one instance, maybe having differentiated assignment. Maybe you just have one and you're going to give it a try, and maybe just to see, did students enjoy this? Is this something that's worth doing in my other courses or maybe in other weeks? And then even if you have a standard, like we have I think this is probably very common at every school, but we have a evaluation form that goes out at the end of the semester. And we encourage students to fill that out, obviously, and that might be something like, for us, it's just universal. Every online course, whether it's an ASU Online course, or we call them I-courses, they're online courses for ground students. But, you know, so it's the same form regardless, but if you have a little bit more granular control over that, like maybe that's something in your course specifically, you could add some UDL related questions just directly to that universal evaluation form.
I've even seen some faculty use some of the features in the LMS that we use, Canvas, which provides analytics.
Yeah.
So instructors can actually go into their courses and look at individual students and see their clicks, right? You can see how many pages they clicked on, how long they stayed on it, those sorts of things. And when you look at, you know, their assessments and how they're doing with the feedback that you're giving them and the grades that they're getting in the course, that starts to really like paint a picture for you in terms of, you know, how successful your implementation of UDL guidelines can be in a classroom.
That's a fantastic. We're relatively new to Canvas, and I always forget about those analytics tools, but yeah, it's so cool.
All right, so our next question is on the hurdles. The question is, what are some of the unique hurdles of implementing UDL in our online courses?
I can tell you one of the major hurdles previously, although now that we have this new tool that we are going to talk about, I know we keep on saying repeating them in, but like just checking the accessibility is, for one course, looking at every single page, looking at every single document, that seemed overwhelming. And that there was an accessibility, and there still is an accessibility checker within Canvas, but that was at the page level, and it didn't really check your documents very well. And if you had something in the image, it doesn't really check to make sure it's viable. So it's just, how do you make it palatable for someone to go through and check things? And so I think that's the biggest part of us getting this new tool, Ally, because it's going to check everything in the course, and it's so easy to find out where you need to dedicate your time, so that you can make things better accessible. I mean, they may already be accessible, but now you have time to check, you know, how are those alt text descriptions of these images, and is it really adequately describing what I think it should for the relation of the impaired user?
Yeah, I think technology tools, that's the thing that really springs to mind, because in some ways these technology tools are amazing. Like VoiceThread's a great example, because you can share things, you can have like groups create presentations, and the narration is so seamless, and sharing, you know, like pasting photos and slides, and then you can give, when students are giving feedback to other students, they can choose audio feedback, video feedback, or text feedback. So again, you know, kind of going back to the multiple modalities, different ways to communicate. That is really cool for UDL, but on the flip side, is it accessible? Now, if you have a student maybe who's using a screen reader, are they experiencing? So it's kind of like, you know, it's great for all these students, but then it creates other problems. So I think just being really clear about your tools, like you were saying earlier, testing the tools.
Yeah.
You know, so you know what you're going into. You know, maybe not always trusting that the VPAD is accurate, unfortunately. And then, you know, even if, you know, sometimes you may have a tool that's amazing, and it's like, it's so great for the majority of students. At least if you go in knowing what those limitations are going to be, so you can speak to those, and you're not caught in a bind at the last minute. So you kind of have an idea of what those alternatives might be. You know, so yeah, I think just being really, really careful about the use of technology tools. It's getting better. I think that accessibility is really, and I know this, you know, UDL is more than just accessibility, but I think, and then UDL is, I think, too, becoming more and more like common, like hearing that term thrown around. So I think people are thinking about it, and it's getting better, but it's still not 100% yet. So
yeah, it's a culture shift, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this in reference to just DRC requests that we get, and not everybody having equal value and spending the time to make things accessible.
True.
DRC, that's our Disability Resource Center.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, it's an interesting thing to try to change the culture of an entire university. But it's a lot easier when you have tools that make it easy for them to implement. So that's probably the biggest hurdle, is just, is it easy or not? Because they've got maybe 5 minutes to dedicate to things, because they're doing research, because we're a research institution. That's where their focus typically is. We do have some specific lecturing faculty, but that's not the majority of our teaching faculty. A lot of them are researchers. A lot of them have mixed and competing priorities in their life. And so making it easy is one of the hurdles that we have to jump over.
Agreed. Tutorials are extremely helpful, especially in terms of webinars, in terms of scalability. But yeah, just making sure that information is easily accessible.
Right.
I agree.
Next topic is, how do we train or prepare others to be a UDL champion in online?
Well, that was a seamless question.
Right? That's a great segue. Great segue. So I'll start first with that. Here at ASU, we do a lot of training for faculty and staff around all the technology that we use, first of all. And we definitely have had this accessibility mindset, you know, come about for the last couple of years. One of the things that my division does is we train faculty in a variety of modalities, which is nice. So if, you know, I have faculty that are at the West Campus and they really need some help with their class, they can contact my team through Zoom, which we're using right now. We have a dedicated Zoom room set up where they can drop in every single day of the week and get help with any of their, you know, LMS challenges, and accessibility has definitely been, you know, one of those things. We also prepare others by providing them with quick videos where they might just take 2 or 3 minutes out just to watch a video that we've produced. We've also captioned it. So that kind of gets people to thinking like, hey, that's really cool. How did you do that, right?
Yeah, modeling it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We also do one-on-one faculty consultations. So if we've got someone that is preparing to teach maybe for the first time or taking over a course that they've never taught before, they might want some more intensive help, and we are there to sit down with them one-on-one and provide that help for them.
Your self-paced tutorials are great. We're actually going to share one of the self-paced tutorials from our university technology group on Ally. So if you don't know what it is, at the end we're sharing the link to one of our resources that we want to crowdsource with you actually, but it includes a link to that.
Yes, yeah. So that's one of the things that we put together, the Ally trainings. Also, what else do? We do a lot.
You guys do a lot.
We do a lot, yeah, yeah. We also just, you know, just make it easy for them to just meet them where they're at, basically. If we have to go to them, we do trainings for different colleges that don't have instructional designers at hand. So like just a couple months ago, we went for the School of Mathematics per se, and you know, they use their LMS in a totally different way that, you know, many others do. So we do specialized trainings as well.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, you know, kind of thinking about, yeah, the volume of, and not having instructional design support.
Right.
At ASU Online, we have, I think, 10 instructional designers for 50 programs. I can't remember now, like, but it's a huge, at one point I looked at my, my spreadsheet of courses, and I think I had 500 courses associated to my name. So, I mean, obviously scalability is huge. Like, how do we get this information out to everybody? Because sometimes one-on-one just is not feasible. So
right.
yeah, just really thinking about like webinars is huge. And then the masterclass that Mary had mentioned earlier, which is our, you know, sort of our flagship. We ask that all teachers who are new to online take it and kind of go through an online course from the perspective of a student. You know, kind of trying to model some of those best practices, even if we're not necessarily calling them out, but modeling the UDL. We have a lot of varied resources, videos, and PDF readings and podcasts and things like that. Having closed captions, making sure that all of our PDFs are readable, you know, giving some different options. We have a lot of optional activities for folks who might be interested in specific things. They can go and explore, giving, you know, options in terms of like assignment submissions. We have where we want them to kind of go through the idea of like, you know, creating like an introduction, and they can submit a video or a script, or so different modalities. So even if we're not necessarily calling it out, hopefully we're providing that modeling, and that will give people some ideas. So.
And another thing that we have that we're going to share as well is our web accessibility site for ASU. Kathy Marks, who's the web accessibility specialist at the University Technology Office, she built a fantastic website for web design, but you can apply it towards your classrooms as well. And there's a bunch of best practices and trainings that are inside that site as well. So we'll also include that. We are getting close, I think, to the end of our session, which is crazy. We thought we wouldn't be able to fill this time, you guys.
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that.
Any other good, like, juicy questions, Brendan, that you want to ask
There was
before
one
we share?
about tools. How much time do we want to leave for questions? What's a good amount?
We're at 12 minutes left.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's do a lightning round. So for me, VoiceThread, which is again like the presentation tool where students can comment in a variety of modalities, is huge. YellowDig, now that it's been sort of redesigned, because again, that's a great tool for our students to share resources, share information in a variety of modalities. I think it's huge.
yeah, I think those are good. Perusal, Brendan just recently brought this up to all of us, and we're in testing with them. It's not as accessible as it could be. We're going to work on it. They're super open to working on it, which is, by the way, awesome. But for the most part, it's a great tool for most users, and it helps students have conversations inside text. And so you can have dedicated discussion rooms in your Canvas, but then they're having these organic conversations inside your text materials, and it's free if you're uploading documents in, or if you're using another like a published book. They can work with the publishers as well to provide access. Let's see, what's another good one?
Ally.
Ally, oh yeah,
Ally.
for sure.
Right, so Ally is an accessibility checker that evaluates all of the course materials within your LMS, and it basically will give you a accessibility score in the form of like a gauge, like a speedometer. And so when you see these different colored gauges, you know how accessible your document is. And what you can do is it also will give you suggestions on how to fix each and everything. So it's really nice because you don't have to think about what to do to make it more accessible. It's going to tell you, this is an image, provide a description of what the image is.
Yep.
And then when you provide the description, it'll even tell you how weak or strong that description is. So if it's a hummingbird, perhaps you might put bird on there. Well, there are many different kinds of birds, right? So you might want to be even more descriptive than that. So Ally is one of like the main tools that we use, and it's a really nice a companion add-on feature for pretty much all LMSs at this point.
And then from the student perspective, we just discovered it'll translate things right into different languages. So that's really cool for students who maybe English is not their first language. And then
it does variable access, it does audio, it does XML, I think.
Yes.
Braille, e-braille.
Yes, it does
e-braille.
e-braille, XML.
So if you upload a PDF, for example, that's appropriately tagged, it'll automatically, students can choose if they want to download it in an alternative format. So
Do you mind putting a link into our site so that folks can check into that in case they need to jump out to another session?
we have
We have a crowdsourcing activity for everybody to participate in where we have specific links to things that we found valuable. We also associated them with the specific framework piece that they fit into, and kind of helps put some very specific connections with UDL's framework and the resources we're providing. We'd invite you guys to participate in that. In the Google site, you just have to click on the document to pop it out outside of the actual Google site to participate in it, but it is editable, and we'd love to have you guys provide your input. And then I happened to notice, if you don't mind, Mindy's question about the tools. So when we do the DRC reviews, the first thing we do is the sight impaired, because that's usually the first place that we have issues, is with our sight impaired users and just usability of the screen reader and its interaction with the content. So that's one of the first things. And then one of the second is the captioning, so just making sure that things that are in that tool have access to alt text or captions, and that if it is a tool where they're creating media, that they can create their own captions or upload an SRT that they've created from something like YouTube, for example.
There's one last tool that I wanted to mention that may not be as widely known, but it's really new, and Ally is actually looking for institutions to help pilot it. It's called Beeline Reader. So it's a tool that makes on-screen reading faster and easier. So what it does is it actually uses an eye-guiding color gradient to help pull the reader's eye from one line to the next.
Very cool.
So it's really like interactive and intuitive and everything, and really helps the reader like get through content quicker.
I wonder if can they turn the reading pace up or down?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can change the pace as well. So
super cool.
Very nice.
It's called Beeline Reader.
Nice. So okay, that is an awesome question. So like what to look for when testing an app.
Did you already post that link to our Google site?
It's in the notes document. But
great. Okay.
Yeah, I can post it in Zoom chat as well. Do you have an accessibility rubric for technologies? Was another question from Megan, which I think is a great. We don't actually. I don't think we have a formalized rubric. We've been, again, working with the Disability Resource Center. Because they have, since they're really focused on that, they kind of have a good idea, and they will ask students who use screen readers to actually go through. So they really quickly
vetted that out.
But again, if that's something you're interested in creating for your own team, I would recommend looking at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and WebAIM has a great one where they've kind of taken the accessibility guidelines and kind of put it in, I think, in plain English, for lack of a better way to put it, and that can be a great place to start, because it's really telling you what you need to look for, like are there keyboard traps and things like that. So gives you an idea of what to test for.
And I have a friend that does testing. He is sight impaired, so if anybody needs a contact, feel free to email me and I'll get you his contact information.
Any other questions from the audience before we sign off?
Well, this was a really nice experience, by the way.
This was
First
great.
DigiCon I've ever presented at.
Me
I don't know about you
too.
guys. And great attendance, so thank you all so much. We look forward to learning from you and seeing your resources in our Google Site document. And just remember, pop it on out to participate and be a part of that resource sharing activity.
Yeah.
Erica had a question about were we actually going to show Ally? I don't believe we had that for this panel, but do we have any resources to share that we can put
In the Google site, there is that self-paced training which shows you Ally. So you can access it there. I think it's in the recognition.
I was actually going to
Was it
say,
expression? I can't remember which one we put it in.
if I can find my test course here, I have like my own little shell where I just kind of test stuff out. I can
great.
demo it real quick.
Yeah, we're going to pop out of the Google Doc, so I apologize for those who are following the captions. We won't have the ability to caption directly what Julie's going to show, so I do apologize.
And oh, there it is. There's my sandbox course. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen real quick here in the remaining moments. Find Chrome. Okay, so yeah, so this is sort of our, well, this is really messy because again, this is my test shell, so please don't judge me. It's disorganized, but we do sort of have like again, trying to, come up with a standardized, syllabus, and we always have this accessibility link. And so anyway, enough about that though. Let's go to the files, and I should be able to find some readings here. Let me minimize this. Okay, so you can see we have some, and some of these aren't being used, but over here on the side, you can see this little dial, and you can click this. So this is red.
Red needs help.
Yeah, this image is missing a description. So, I could add my image description here. I could add it right in that, and then click add, or I can indicate that this image is decorative, and this is so cool. So I click add, and it go ahead and it does it for me.
It doesn't always give you the adequate, hey, that's an adequate alt text. So what's nice about Ally is once you're done making sure all of your PDFs and Word docs are accessible, then you can really start focusing and honing on your image descriptions and the alt text there as well.
It does give you, how to write a good description.
It does.
So it does give you some
guidelines.
Yeah, it does give you guidelines, which are nice. So it does kind of, lead you through the best practices if you're not familiar with it. And then also too, so like, let me find a PDF that's not accessible. Okay, so red. So, it's this PDF is scanned. This is super common in online courses where, maybe someone's gone to the library, maybe, 15 years ago, and they've been using the same scan PDF. That's, if you have a good resource, why not continue to use it? But, again, it leads you through how to fix it. And then when you're done fixing it, you can literally just upload it here, and then you're good to go. And I don't think we have enough time, but I did find a little workaround. So if you upload something that's scanned, there is a way to, from the student perspective, you can download an OCR version.
Yes.
So if you download the OCR version and then pull it up in Adobe Acrobat Pro, it's actually much easier. Like I'll run the accessibility checker and fix stuff, tag stuff. And it's actually much easier because I think Ally does some of that cleanup for you automatically. So then it's much faster to do that remediation. So I use it as a workaround all the time for PDF remediation.
Yeah, and good to know. And by the way, never feel bad about clicking something as a decorative image if it actually doesn't add value, because I can't tell you how irritating it is now having sat through these accessibility checks with someone who's sight impaired, for the sight impaired user using a screen reader to hear about things that are not relevant.
Right.
So if it's not relevant, it is totally okay to say decorative image, skip. And it does skip it, and it improves the student's experience. So never feel bad about marking something as a decorative image if it truly is not adding content value.
Yeah, like ASU logo, like good,
right.
ASU logo, like cool, okay, like so women smiling.
Relevant content.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our time. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing all the resources that you share in the DigiCon document. We'll share all of our resources, and we hope you have a great rest of your conference.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Bye.